Hey everyone, so this is first video of our Docker series. So without wasting any time, let's start the video. So I have prepared the Notion doc, like I've added all the topic that I'm going to teach you on this video. So let's see. So let's learn about what is Docker, and then we will see how to install it, and we will see the architecture of Docker, and then learn about images, containers, port mapping, and some common commands in Docker. So let's start the video. So what is Docker? Like before learning Docker, we should understand that what is Docker. So Docker is a platform that help us to build, ship, and run applications inside containers. See, a container is like a lightweight, portable mini virtual machine, but way faster and more efficient, which means that it doesn't require a virtual machine which has a lots of things and which is a bit heavy than the container. So Docker is help us to run our code in a lightweight environment. Why to use Docker? Let's say we have built some code, like we have work on a project, and we see that that code is working on our system, but when we give that code to another person, the code doesn't work. In that case, Docker help us. Docker fixes these issues. When you write a code, like this is the code base you have written, and it is working perfectly on your system, but when you give this code to another person, it doesn't work on the other side. So you say that it is working on my system, but why it is not working on your system? Because there are lots of reasons, like dependencies, system configuration. Like some person has, like different person can have different types of versions of softwares. So in that case you can find some issues, compatibility issues. There are many things. So all these issues Docker solves very easily. It provides us an environment which runs the same way in all the operating system. So you don't have to, like, this is your Mac machine, this is someone's Windows machine. The code base is working here differently, and it is working here, or maybe getting some issues on this system. But what Docker provides us, Docker provides us a container. This is the container Docker provides, and let's say this is your Mac machine. So when other person see this container will have all the things that this application requires to run, like in Node.js installed, or any dependencies that you might be using. So when other person needs to use this application, you just need to send this container. So they will start this container in their system. Let's suppose if it is Windows, so they will start this container in Windows, and it will run the same way it was running here. So there won't be any more problem here. That we often see that people developers often say that it works on my machine. So Docker fixes these issues. So I hope you understand this. See, this is a great analogy. Docker is like a shipping container for code. It wraps your app plus system configs plus runtime, so it can be shipped and run anywhere without breaking. So this is what we have seen. Like if it is working here, which means it should work everywhere wherever we send that containers. It uses less resources than full virtual machines. Virtual machines comes with a lots of things, but Docker container comes with necessary things, so it doesn't increase the size without any reason. So this is also a plus point of Docker. Let's see installing Docker. If you want to install Docker, you can go on this website and install. Since I have installed Docker on my system, so I'm not going to install Docker. And if you want to see if Docker installed in your system correctly, you can go in the command prompt and you can write Docker. So you can see if it is running, you are getting something, which means that Docker is installed in your system correctly. If it doesn't, that means Docker is not installed in your system correctly and you should install it. Let's learn about Docker architecture, how it works, what is inside Docker. So Docker has three main components: Docker engine, Docker CLI, and Docker registry. So let's learn Docker CLI first, then we will learn what is Docker registry. At the end, we will be learning Docker engine. So let's see. This is your Docker CLI. What it says. It is the front-end tool for users to interact with Docker. Converts our terminal commands into REST API requests, and it helps us to write some Docker commands. So let's see. This is like a terminal. Whatever we write inside, whatever we write inside this, whatever we write inside it, it will be executed, but it will not execute here. It will send. It will be sent somewhere, which it will be sent to Docker engine, and in Docker engine we have Docker daemon that will execute the command that we are sending from it here. It will send this command via REST API, and it helps us to, like, as you can take an example of a client server application. When you write an API, what you usually do? Let me clear this. Let's suppose this is your browser and this is your API server dependo, and this is your API server. So if you there are some API has written here. So if you want something from the API, what you do? You request the backend that whatever you want from the backend server, you request it, and backend sends it in the response. So this is how it also work. Like you can see, it is the front end tool for user to interact with Docker. What does mean? That this browser is, in the Docker case, the browser is nothing but a CLI. You are interacting with CLI and you are asking Docker to do things. What things you are asking? Like to build an image, to run a container. These things you can request to the Docker, and Docker will run this and send it to you as a response, and you can then print on the terminal. Let's see Docker registry. What is Docker registry? This is where the Docker images are stored. I think you will confused by Docker images. Don't worry, we have a slide. We will be learning Docker images here. Just think images as a code base of your GitHub repository. Docker image is nothing but a, like, it's a blueprint of your application. Like see here, like GitHub but for Docker images. Docker registry. What is Docker registry? It is like a GitHub but for Docker images. What you store in the GitHub? You store your image, sorry, you store your code base in GitHub, but in Docker registry you store your Docker images, and you can easily pull and push your Docker images using these commands like you used in GitHub. You, if you want to pull some code base from the GitHub, what do? You write git pull origin, and like first you set the, like if you want to clone, what do? You just write git clone and the repository link, so it clones the repository on your local system. So this is how Docker also do. This is pulls the image in your local system. See, there are two types, like there are two types of Docker registry. One is official Docker registry, which is provided by Docker, and it is Docker Hub. So you can go on this website hub.docker.com. This hub.docker.com is the official registry of Docker, and also you can have your private registries such as ECR, Elastic Container Registry, which is provided by Amazon. You can create your private registries there. See, ideal for teams and companies, like some big companies prefer to use their own registry instead of Docker Hub. Now let's learn the most important thing in Docker is Docker engine. You can think it like a heart of the Docker. It does the main thing inside the Docker. So what is Docker engine? It is a core client server application that runs and manages containers. It actually runs whatever command we send via REST API. See, this is the Docker daemon. It is the server side, which means that in this example we have seen client sends the request to the Docker, but in it is not Docker. Like if you, if we take example of client server, if this is client and this is server, which means that client sends the request to the server via REST API. This is REST API, and the server executes it and then send it back in the response. So here it is CLI. CLI sends the request to the backend, which means it sends to the Docker daemon, or you can like currently say Docker engine. Then Docker engine executes it, and like whatever command we have written in the CLI, and send it, like supposed to pull the request. So what it will do, it will pull the request from the Docker hub and then store it locally in our machine. And what is Docker daemon? Docker daemon is the server side. It runs in the background, responsive for creating, running and managing containers. Let's learn these two things, then I will explain you the architecture of it so you will understand it very clearly. Docker daemon, what is Docker daemon? It is just a server side. Whatever we requested, it executes it. Just understand this much. And what is Docker REST API? It is used by CLI. It is used by CLI or external tool to interact with daemon. All communication, start, stop, pull image, etc. happens through this API. So we not only can request Docker, like Docker daemon via CLI, we also can use Postman to request something from the Docker daemon. So let's see this architecture, how all this is working. So you can see this is Docker CLI. You write commands inside it. Let's suppose you write you want to pull Redis image from the Docker registry. So you will write docker pull Redis, this command, and what this command will, and when you hit the enter button, the request will go to the Docker daemon, which is present inside the Docker engine, and this request will be going via Docker REST API. So Docker daemon first see if the image exists in local or not. If it doesn't exist, what it will do? It will ask to the Docker registry, and then in the response, it will get the Redis image and it will store it locally and then send it to the Docker pull. Sorry, send it to the Docker CLI. And Docker CLI will print the result whatever, like if it is failed or you successfully pulled the image. Let's see here in detail what you are doing. This is your CLI, and this is your Docker registry, and this is your Docker engine, inside which Docker engine has the Docker daemon. So what happens when you write some command inside the Docker CLI? Let's suppose you want to pull the image. What image? Let's suppose you want to pull Postgres image. So what you will write? Docker pull Postgres. You will write this command, and when you hit the enter button, this request will go to the Docker daemon. This is Docker REST API. Okay. This request will go to the Docker daemon, and before pulling it, it will see what will it see? It will see if the Postgres image exists locally or not. If it exists if it exists in the local, it will exist. If locally, it will sense in the response and say that it exists already. But if it doesn't exist, what will happen? If it doesn't exist, the Docker daemon will ask to the Docker registry to give me the Postgres image. So what Docker registry will give it the Postgres image, and then this Docker daemon will store it locally. It's in your local machine. It will store this Postgres image, and after uh, storing that Postgres image locally, Docker daemon will sends in the response to the CLI, and then CLI prints that the Docker that this image is successfully pulled from the Docker hub. So this is all the architecture of the Docker. All these things like Docker CLI, Docker registry, and Docker engine works together to execute our execute our commands. So I hope you understand this. Let's see the building blocks of Docker, which is Docker images and Docker containers. Okay, so what is Docker image and what is Docker container? A Docker image is a lightweight, standalone executable package that includes everything needed to run a piece of software, including the code, a runtime, libraries, environment, वगैरह वगैरह. It is a read-only template, so we cannot write or do anything in it. We just can read it. We can just run containers using it. It is a blueprint of an application. So let's see here. This is a Docker image. It will have everything that you need to run your application, such as, let's say you want to run your Node.js application. So Node.js installed. It will have all the dependencies installed. It will have your code base installed. Everything, any configuration that you might have, everything will be present inside the Docker image. And if you want to run it, for that we have Docker container. What is Docker container? When you run this image, when you run this image, which means now it is a running Docker container. This is the container. It is like a, now if it exposes some port, you can, let's suppose if it exposes port 3000, you can actually go to the 3000 port and you can see this application running there. So Docker container is a running instance of an image. It encapsulates the application or service and its dependencies running in an isolated environment. So you can run now this container multiple, like you can map multiple port with this container, and you can easily run multiple containers inside your application, and each container will be isolated. This can't be connected to each other. So this is the benefit of Docker container. It runs in an isolated environment. You can see here as well this image. We pull an image and we can run multiple instances of that image, and those instances called containers. So we can run multiple instances, and they are isolated. They are running independently from each other. So they are isolated, and this is the beauty of Docker, that we can spin up multiple container without any extra efforts, just a simple commands. So it is very useful when we want to scale our application.